to The Social, everybody. Well, we all know that starting a family could be a really exciting time for a lot of people. But for roughly 1 in 6 Canadian couples who have trouble conceiving, this can be a really frustrating, even a very exhausting time. I've shared on the show a lot of times my husband and I went through countless tests. We spent 2.5 years trying to get pregnant until we finally did. So how... Yay! Katie, work case up.
So how do you know if you can't conceive? And when is the right time to seek professional help? Here to answer these questions and much more is an infertility specialist at Toronto Centre for Advanced Reproductive Technology, Dr. Dan Nayot.
So how do we define infertility, and when is the right time to know that, okay, we got to go to a specialist now?
Right. So infertility is clinically defined as trying to conceive and being unsuccessful after 12 months. And when we say trying, we mean frequent unprotected sex around the time of ovulation. We generally recommend for someone who's under the age of 35 to wait about 12 months, and somebody over the age of 35 just about 6 months. But that doesn't mean you have to wait the full 6 or 12 months. Sometimes you already know that you have this underlying issue. For example, if you have a husband who's had a vasectomy, you know there's no sperm, there's no way to delay.
Right. Okay, we have a question from one of our viewers on Facebook. Elvira Graham writes, we're taught the moment a girl starts having a period, she's fertile, but at 40 plus, I'm still having a period. Why isn't that fertile the same? And what exactly does old eggs mean? Oh. Which is a horrible expression, I know, right?
Yeah. So the question brings up a really important point, is that women's fertility is extremely correlated to their biological age. So we know that women are born with a set amount of eggs when they're born, so the quantity and the quality decrease over time. Whereas, of course, for men, they're like an assembly line. Sperm's always being created. It takes about 2 to 3 months for sperm to be created. So for men, age is much less of a factor. Mm-hmm. So even if you're in your late 40s and you're having cycles every month, you're probably ovulating. But these older eggs, they don't have the same potential to fertilize an implant. If you think about it, these eggs have been sitting quietly in the ovaries till the time of ovulation. That's like 40 years of shelf life.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't decrease the quality of the eggs that are there, does it?
It does.
I mean, sorry, I know it does. It does. It can. But
it does.
Never mind.
It does.
Never mind.
Yeah.
But can you find a golden egg?
That's right. I feel like I found a golden egg.
An oldie, but an old Goldie.
Thank
you. There a Goldie and an oldie? Is that, yeah. Is there a Goldie oldie?
There's always a Goldie oldie.
Thank you.
Right.
I got that Goldie oldie. Anyway.
What are the common fertility treatments, and how much do they cost? And I think a lot of people would like to know what they involve, because sometimes it can be challenging and a lot of appointments, a lot of
Sure.
a lot of time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the treatments really range in complexity. For example, these days lots of couples live in different cities for their jobs. For them, you can imagine trying to get pregnant, especially if she's ovulating in the middle of that week, is almost impossible. So sometimes in that scenario, just monitoring her cycle, syncing her ovulation with her next trip to see her partner is all that it takes. Sometimes we do have to have more involved, like minimally invasive surgery, in vitro fertilization, which is known as IVF. But the cost related to it is really dependent on the treatment and really depends on the province you live on. It can range from several hundreds of dollars to several thousands of dollars.
And the location of whoever, your spouse, too.
That's right.
Like if your spouse is away and you have to pay for airfare, you have to factor all of that in. And the emotional cost, too, right?
Yeah, very. And I did numerous rounds of, I did IUI, which is called intrauterine insemination, and I did numerous rounds of that. So it could be the same thing that you're trying over and over and over again. Same thing with IVF.
That's right.
So you're not just clocking once. I want to talk about the rate of success for the different treatments. So what are you seeing in your practice?
Well, before we can talk about success rates, I just want to take a step back to put everything into perspective. So we all learn in grade school in sex ed that contraception is important and how to not get pregnant. But we have this misconception that as soon as you try, you're going to get pregnant right away. So just as a baseline, a healthy young couple who's just starting to try, their chance is only 15 to 20% per month.
15 to 20%.
15 to 20%.
That's not a lot, really.
That's not that much. We're
Wow.
pretty inefficient humans. But if you compare that to technology like in vitro fertilization, and granted it really depends on the couple, we can get success rates above 40% per cycle.
Wow.
Wow, that's significant.
Okay, so our next question comes from Adrienne on Facebook, and she asks, does being on birth control affect the ability to conceive? I was on birth control from 18 to 29, and it took until I was 38 to become pregnant for the first time. We fell into the unexplained category, which I feel like more and more people are being slotted into.
Right.
So let's talk about both those things. Like, does being on birth control impact your ability to conceive?
So the birth control itself does not impact it, but it's really important to figure out why was this patient on birth control in the first place. Many women have heavy, irregular periods when they're younger. The family doctor or the specialist may put them on birth control pills, which works really well and regulates their cycle, but when they come off it, the same sort of symptoms are showing up. So it's really been unmasking what's been there the whole time. The other thing is that birth control pills really allows women to be in control of their reproductive health and decide when to start trying. So just that delay in trying is a big factor in infertility.
Okay. And just to explain, for those who don't know, the unexplained infertility category.
That was me.
Yes.
Ryan and I were perfectly healthy, and they just said, we have no idea why you're not conceiving. And I know what you're going to say. For some people, that's great, and for some people, it wasn't.
Right.
I was terribly frustrated
Right.
because I said, what do you mean there's nothing wrong with me?
You want
I'm
an
not
answer.
conceiving? I want an answer so I can do something. Is that common?
So you brought up a good point, because we call it unexplained infertility. It's not very medical, but it means that we've checked everything and we can't find an obvious thing that's contributing to your fertility. And like you said, some patients are really upset because they want to know what's going on, but other patients are relieved that everything looks fine.
Okay.
Can a previous miscarriage or abortion affect fertility?
That's an interesting question, because given that you've been pregnant before, you're obviously a fertile person, but the procedure that's involved, either an abortion or sometimes in a miscarriage, that can have an impact on your future fertility. So if you've had an abortion or required the procedure for miscarriage and your cycles are a bit off, go see your doctor.
Very, very smart indeed. Now, you often say that, I know because I've heard this a million times, just relax, stop being so stressed about trying. When you stop stressing about trying and cry every month when you get your period, everything's going to be fine, which is what was happening to me. I was literally crying every month I got my period. It's not happening this month. Oh, my gosh. And people would say that to me all the time, and I'm like, you know what? Shove it. Shove it. Don't tell me to relax, and then it's just going to happen.
Right.
But they had the best intention.
They did, but when you
did.
hear it month after month, it's
know.
frustrating.
Yeah.
I will say this, it was when we were not trying, really not trying.
So they were right?
Well, a little bit.
They were a little bit right, because that's when I got pregnant.
Is that
So-
like a watched pot never boils? Is
Yeah,
that
my
like
mom
right?
says that. But they do it with love. And
Maybe.
and for not knowing. It's maybe like having a show like this and having a segment like this, people will
maybe
be more sensitive.
sensitive.
More sensitive.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. So what do you think about that? Is that true, first of all? Is it true that when you don't stress about it, it does help?
I think I have to, on behalf of all the patients out there, tell you that's the most frustrating comment that they hear, okay? It unfairly puts blame on the patient, and truthfully, most of them are quite relaxed until they hear that comment, and that really we do know that extreme, prolonged, stressful states definitely have an impact on fertility, but much less so this day-to-day stressful stuff. So I think stress is always advisable to calm down, but it's just a small part of the equation.
Thank you so much for being here, Dr.
Thanks for
Gray.
having me.
Yeah. Thank you. We're going to have all of this information available to you on our website after the show. And don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back.